The day I found out my family had been telling people I was dead, I was standing in the produce aisle of a grocery store in Portland, Oregon, holding a bag of oranges. I remember that detail because the oranges were the first thing to fall. My phone rang, and when I answered, a woman I barely knew said, "I'm sorry to bother you. I was cleaning out my mother's things, and I found your name in an old address book. We thought you passed away 5 years ago." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes your mind makes a sound your heart hasn't caught up to yet. "I'm sorry," I said. "Who did you think I was?" She said my name, my full name. Then she said, very quietly, "Your family told everyone you died after a long illness." The oranges slipped out of my hands. 3 rolled under a shopping cart. 1 hit a stranger's shoe. And for several seconds, I just stood there, staring at the floor, while the entire world seemed to become strangely calm. Because I had not died. I had simply stopped sending my family $4,000 every month. That was all. I had not stolen from them. I had not abandoned a child. I had not disappeared without warning. I had stopped paying their bills. And apparently, in my family, that was the same thing as dying. My name is Claire Bennett, and for most of my adult life, I believed that being a good daughter meant making sure everyone around me was comfortable, even when it cost me everything. I was 39 years old when I finally understood that some families don't love the person you are. They love what you provide. And the day you stop providing it, they begin looking for ways to erase you. I grew up in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio, in a house with faded blue shutters and a maple tree in the front yard that my father used to call the family witness. He planted it the year I was born. He said, someday, when all of us were older, we would sit under that tree and laugh about how difficult life had been. My father, Daniel, was a practical man. Not warm, not cruel, just practical. He believed every problem could be solved with discipline, patience, and a well-organized bank account. My mother, Elaine, was different. She was affectionate in public and controlling in private. She could make a compliment sound like criticism. She could tell me she was proud of me and somehow make me feel guilty at the same time. Then there was my younger brother, Ryan. Ryan was 6 years younger than me, and from the moment he was born, our family seemed to revolve around him. He was charming, funny, restless, and somehow always in trouble. When Ryan needed a new car, there was a family meeting. When I needed help paying for college, my mother said, "You're independent. You'll figure it out." So I did. I worked 2 jobs, took out loans, and graduated with a degree in accounting. Ryan dropped out of community college twice. My parents called it finding himself. I started working at a regional investment firm. Ryan started working at a car dealership. Nobody questioned the difference. I was the responsible one. That became my role. And once a family gives you a role, they don't like it when you try to resign. At 27, I married a man named Evan. He was kind, quiet, patient. He understood me in a way my family never had. He used to tell me, "You don't have to earn your right to be loved." I thought that sounded beautiful. I also thought it was something I would learn eventually. Then Evan died unexpectedly at 31. It was a winter morning. A road was slick. A delivery truck crossed a lane. And my whole life changed in less than a minute. For months after that, I moved through the world like someone walking underwater. My mother became my closest companion during those weeks. She came to my apartment. She cooked. She folded laundry. She sat beside me while I stared at the television without hearing a word. She told everyone, "My daughter is going through the worst thing a person can go through." And I believed she was protecting me. I didn't understand that she was also studying me, watching how much money Evan had left, watching what the insurance company paid, watching what kind of accounts existed, watching what kind of person I had become after losing the man who had once helped me build a life. Evan had been careful. He had life insurance, savings, investments, a small life that, together, came to more money than I had ever seen in one place. After taxes, legal fees, and several months of paperwork, I had roughly $700,000. It wasn't a fortune, but to my family, it was the answer to every problem they had spent 20 years refusing to solve. The first time my mother asked for money, she cried. She said the roof was failing. She said Dad's work had slowed down. She said Ryan was trying to start a business. Then she said the sentence that would eventually control my entire life. "You're the only one who can help us." I gave them $20,000. I told myself it was temporary. Then came another request. Then another. By the end of the first year, I had given them almost $60,000. My brother's business needed equipment. My parents needed repairs. My mother developed a habit of calling me every Friday evening. "Sweetheart," she would say. I hate asking. That phrase always came before another request. By the second year, I had moved from occasional help to a regular monthly transfer. 4,000美元 every month. No questions. No written agreement. Just an understanding. My mother called it family support. I called it love. But there is a difference between helping family and becoming the family's private bank. I didn't see that difference until it was almost too late. At first, the money went toward things I could understand. A plumbing repair, a medical bill, a business expense. Then the explanations became vague. Unexpected costs, some paperwork, an issue with the house, something for Ryan. I stopped asking. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was believing that gratitude would eventually replace expectation. It didn't. Expectation became entitlement. I noticed the change in little ways. My mother stopped saying thank you. Ryan stopped asking if I was okay. My father stopped looking embarrassed. The $4,000 was no longer treated as help. It was treated as a payment. Once, I missed the transfer date because I was traveling for work. My mother called me 43 times. When I finally answered, she said, "What is wrong with you?" I stared at the phone. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. The money. I'm traveling. That doesn't explain why you forgot." I didn't forget. I thought I could send it tomorrow. She went silent. Then she said, "People can see your priorities very clearly, Claire." That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was cruel, because it was revealing. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask how work was going. She didn't ask if I was struggling. She wanted her transfer. I sent it that night. And I apologized. I actually apologized. That is how deeply this kind of conditioning can get inside you. You can be the person paying for everyone else's life and still feel like you're failing them. 3 months later, I received an email from an attorney representing a property management company in Ohio. The subject line said, "Regarding your ownership interest." I almost deleted it. I assumed it was spam. Then I opened it. The attorney explained that my name appeared in connection with a property held by a family trust, a property I had never heard of. There was an attachment, a document, my father's signature, my mother's signature, and a reference to my grandfather, Arthur Bennett. My grandfather had died when I was 19. He had owned several pieces of land around central Ohio. Nothing glamorous. Warehouses, 2 small rental buildings, a parcel near a highway. He had always been private about money. According to the attorney, a trust had been created before his death. And according to the trust documents, I was one of the beneficiaries. I thought that meant I had inherited something years earlier. I had not. The attorney explained that the trust was structured so the properties remained under management until certain conditions were met. One of those conditions involved me reaching a specific age. I was already past it. The second condition involved my father and mother acknowledging the transfer. They had never done that. I read the document 3 times. Then I called the attorney. "Are you sure this is me?" "Yes." "Why has nobody told me?" There was a pause. Then the attorney said, "That is something you should probably ask your parents." I called my mother. She didn't answer. I called my father. He did. "Dad, I just got an email about Granddad's trust." Silence. Then, "What email?" I told him. His voice changed. "Where did you get that?" "From the attorney listed on the paperwork." Another silence. Then he said, "Your mother and I handled that years ago." "Handled what?" "Your grandfather's estate. But this says I'm a beneficiary." "It's complicated." "What is complicated?" "You don't understand legal documents." That was the first time my father had ever spoken to me like I was a child. I said, "Then explain it." He sighed. "Your grandfather was sick near the end. There were obligations, taxes, costs. The trust wasn't what you think." "What do I think?" "You think there's some secret fortune waiting for you." I looked at the document. "And isn't there?" "No." He hung up. I sat in my apartment for almost an hour. Then the attorney called me. She said, "Claire, there's something else you need to know." My hands went cold. What? The trust was never meant to benefit your parents. What? They were temporary administrators. Administrators of what? Of your inheritance. I couldn't breathe. How much? She hesitated. Claire, the portfolio connected to the trust has generated substantial income over the years. How much? Roughly $2.8 million in assets. I actually laughed. It was the same strange laugh that would come years later in a grocery store when someone told me my family thought I was dead. Because once again, reality was so absurd that laughter was the only thing my brain could produce. I had been sending my parents $4,000 every month, and all along there was nearly $3 million connected to my grandfather's trust. Money that apparently belonged to me. I asked the attorney one question. Why didn't I know? She said. That is the question we need to answer. That was the moment my relationship with my family changed. I didn't confront them immediately. I started investigating, quietly, carefully. I pulled bank statements, old tax returns, emails, insurance records, property records, every document I could find, and a pattern began to appear. The $4,000 I was sending every month wasn't being used for what I had been told. Some of it was, most of it wasn't. Payments were being made to companies I had never heard of. A landscaping business, a consulting company, an auto parts supplier, a property maintenance company. The strange part was that all four companies had addresses connected to people I knew. One belonged to Ryan's wife's brother. Another belonged to a friend of my mother. The third was registered to a man who had worked with my father for years. The fourth was registered to an office I recognized. My family's house. I stared at the screen. Then I found something even worse. One of the payments had been made from an account titled Bennett Family Support. The account had my name on it, but I had never opened it. I called the bank. After going through security questions, the representative said, "This account was opened 5 years ago." By whom? She could not disclose everything over the phone, but she did tell me there were authorized users. My mother, my father, and my brother. I felt sick. Not because they had used my money, because they had created an account in my name. I called the attorney again. She told me not to confront anyone yet. She referred me to a forensic accountant. A week later, I met a woman named Melissa Grant at a coffee shop outside downtown Columbus. Melissa was in her 50s. Gray hair, sharp eyes, no patience for excuses. She looked through the records and said, "They built a system." What kind of system? One where your money disappears into small enough pieces that you never see the whole picture. How much? She gave me a number. Nearly $400,000 over 5 years. Money that had come from me. Not including the trust assets. Not including property income. Not including other transfers. I stared at her. What was it spent on? Melissa turned the papers toward me. Some business expenses, some household expenses, some travel. Travel? She pointed to a series of charges. Hotels, airfare, restaurants, a resort in Florida. My family had taken a 2-week vacation while I was working 60-hour weeks and believing I was keeping them afloat. I felt something inside me go quiet. Not angry. Not yet. Just quiet. Melissa asked, "Do you want my honest opinion?" "Yes. You need to stop sending them money." I almost cried. It sounded impossible. I had been doing it for years. It felt like turning off oxygen. What happens if I stop? Melissa looked at me. You find out what your family thinks you're worth without the money. I stopped the transfers the next month. I didn't warn them. I didn't explain. I simply didn't send anything. My mother called 3 times that morning. Then 8 times. Then 21. By dinner, she left a voicemail. "Claire, something is wrong with the account. Call me immediately." I didn't. The next message was different. "You need to call us." Then, "Claire, this is not funny." Then, "You are putting your father in a terrible position." Then, "How could you do this?" And finally, late that night, "If something happens to us because of this, you will have to live with it." I turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Ryan. It said, "You always said family was important. I almost laughed. Family was important. But apparently I was the only one who believed that. I did not answer. 2 days later, my father left me a message. You need to come home. Not, please. Not, we need to talk. You need to come home. I didn't. Instead, I met with my attorney. We began the legal process to challenge the handling of my grandfather's trust. That was when the first real crack appeared. The trust documents had been altered, not obviously, not in a way a casual reader would notice, but a signature page had been replaced. The original version was dated differently. The newer version removed certain reporting requirements. It also gave my parents broader authority over the assets. The attorney asked if I knew who had changed the documents. I said no. She said, "We're going to find out." That was the beginning of the truth. Not the whole truth, but enough to make my family panic. My mother called again. This time I answered. She sounded strangely calm. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "You know exactly what I mean. I know you opened an account in my name." Silence. Then she said, "Who told you that?" "I found it." "You went through our private records?" "They were my financial records. It was for the family. You spent my money without telling me. That money was meant for all of us." "No, it wasn't." My mother's voice hardened. "You had more than enough. That doesn't make it yours." She began crying. "You have no idea what we sacrificed for you." I nearly shouted. "What did you sacrifice?" She said, "We raised you." I closed my eyes. There it was, the oldest debt in the world. The debt children are told they must repay forever simply because their parents gave them life. "I never asked you to make me your retirement plan," I said. She went silent. Then she said something I will never forget. "You think you're better than us now." "No, you always did." "That's not true." "Then send the money." I stared out the window. "No." She inhaled sharply. Then she said, "Fine." That one word should have warned me. I just didn't know how. The following week, I received calls from people I hadn't spoken to in years. A cousin, an old family friend, a neighbor from my hometown. Every conversation was strange. They were overly gentle. They asked if I was doing okay. They asked if I was resting. One woman cried while speaking to me. Finally, I asked her, "What exactly do you think happened to me?" She said, "Your mother told us you were very sick." My stomach dropped. "Sick with what?" She hesitated. She didn't say. I ended the call and immediately called my mother. She did not answer. I called my brother. He did. I asked, "What are people being told about me?" Ryan said nothing. "Ryan, you need to leave this alone. What are people being told?" He finally said, "Mom said it was better that way." Better for who? Another silence. For everyone. That night, I hired a private investigator. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted facts. 3 weeks later, he gave me a report. My family had been telling people I had become seriously ill. Then, at some point during the following year, they told people I had died. There was no funeral, no public notice, no announcement, just a story. I had gotten sick. I had moved away. My condition had become private. Then I had passed. That was why no one had contacted me. They thought they were respecting the family's wishes. The investigator also found something else. My mother had been telling people that I had left the family because I was unstable. My brother said I had lost touch with reality. My father said almost nothing. That hurt more than anything else, because silence can become a form of agreement. Then came the biggest discovery. My family had not only lied about me, they had used my supposed death to explain why I no longer attended family events, why I didn't answer calls, and why my grandfather's trust remained under their control. And then, somehow, they had taken it one step further. They had created a memorial page online. It had my photo, my birth date, a sentence about how Claire passed quietly after a long struggle. There were comments beneath it, people saying they were sorry, people saying I had been a beautiful person. People who had never spoken to me in years were grieving me. I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the page. Then I realized something. They had turned me into a dead woman because a dead daughter couldn't ask where her money went. That was the moment fear disappeared. I stopped wanting them to understand me. I stopped wanting an apology. I wanted the truth on paper. And I wanted the truth in a courtroom if necessary. The legal process moved slowly. My mother fought everything. My father claimed confusion. Ryan claimed he had no knowledge of the details. But money leaves footprints. Banktransfers, tax records, invoices, property records. There was nowhere for the truth to hide forever. Then one morning, Melissa called me. I found something. What? A payment from the trust. To whom? She gave me the name. It was a lawyer. I recognized the firm. It was the law office that had handled my grandfather's estate. Why did the trust pay them? Because they were involved in preparing. My heart began pounding. Are you saying the attorney changed the trust? I'm saying someone at that office knew. That afternoon, my attorney received another document. It was an old letter from my grandfather, handwritten, dated 6 months before his death. It had been stored in a safe deposit box. The letter was addressed to me. I read it slowly. My grandfather wrote that he knew my father would probably try to protect the family after his death. He wrote that he had watched me give too much of myself to people who always seemed to need more. Then came the line that broke me. He said, "Claire, if you ever feel as though your family only loves you when you are useful to them, believe what your heart is telling you." I put the paper down. My grandfather had seen it. Years before I did, he had known. And then I read the final paragraph. He had created the trust to protect me, not just financially, emotionally. He wanted me to have enough freedom to build a life that did not depend on anyone's approval. That was the inheritance. Not the money, the freedom. My grandfather had left me a way out. My family had spent years turning that gift into a weapon against me. When the truth finally reached my mother, she called me crying. "Your grandfather would be ashamed of you." I said, "Why? For what you're doing to this family?" I looked at the letter in my hand. "No, Mom." "What?" "He would be ashamed that I let you do this to me for so long." She hung up. The lawsuit continued. There were depositions, documents, questions. My brother eventually admitted that he knew about the false account. He said my mother told him it was necessary. My father admitted that he knew the trust had money. He claimed he believed they were entitled to use some of it. My mother refused to admit almost anything. Then we found the final piece. A spreadsheet. It had been created years earlier. At the top was a simple title, Claire Monthly. Underneath were columns for money coming in, family expenses, and expected balances. Beside my name was a note, keep transfer active. Beside Ryan's name was, do not tell Claire about business debt. Beside my parents' names was, trust income covers household. And at the bottom was one sentence, Claire must continue believing family depends on her. I read that sentence 3 times. Then I gave it to my attorney. A week later, my mother finally agreed to mediation. We met in a conference room with gray walls and a long table. My father looked older than I remembered. My mother had not looked at me since I walked in. Ryan sat with his arms crossed. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Then the mediator said, "We are here to discuss resolution." My mother laughed. "Resolution?" She looked at me. "She has ruined this family." I said nothing. She continued, "She was always selfish." I looked at her. "Selfish?" "Yes. You told everyone I was dead." Her face tightened. "You stopped helping us. I stopped paying your bills. You knew we needed it. You had access to millions of dollars. That money was complicated. It was mine." My father finally spoke. "Claire, there were things you didn't understand." I turned toward him. "Then tell me now." He didn't answer. I leaned forward. "Dad, I spent 5 years thinking I had a responsibility to keep all of you comfortable. I worked overtime. I said no to relationships. I didn't buy a house. I didn't take vacations. I kept sending you $4,000 every month because Mom made me believe the family would fall apart without me." He looked down. "And while I was doing that," I said, "you were telling people I was dead." My mother whispered, "We were protecting everyone." "From what? You?" The room became very quiet. I realized something then. They didn't think I had been harmed. They thought I had become inconvenient. My mother looked at me. "You changed." "Yes," I said. "You became cold?" "No. I became careful." She shook her head. "You used to care about this family." "I still do." "Then why are you doing this?" I looked at my father, then Ryan, then my mother. And I said the sentence I had been carrying for years. Because loving someone does not mean letting them destroy you. My brother stood up. You think money makes you right? No. Then what does? The truth. He laughed bitterly. You always think you're the good one. I said, I don't need to be the good one. I pushed the spreadsheet across the table. I just need the facts to speak for themselves. Ryan looked at it. His face changed. My mother whispered, Where did you get that? I almost smiled. That was the first honest question she had asked me in years. The mediation ended with an agreement. My parents would return a large portion of the money taken from my trust. My brother would repay funds connected to the false account. The properties would be transferred properly into my control. And there would be a formal acknowledgement that my parents had misrepresented my status to relatives and others. No dramatic courtroom speech. No shouting. No movie-style punishment. Just documents. Deadlines. Payments. Consequences. Real consequences are often quieter than people expect. My father lost the ability to manage the family properties. My mother had to sell the vacation property she had bought using money she once told me was for emergency repairs. Ryan's business collapsed under debts he had been hiding. He moved to another state. He stopped speaking to my parents for nearly a year. As for me, I moved forward. I bought a modest house outside Seattle. Not a mansion. Not something designed to impress anyone. Just a quiet place with a backyard and enough room for a garden. The first thing I planted was a maple tree. I thought of my grandfather. I thought of my father. I thought of the little blue-shuttered house in Ohio. And I realized I was no longer planting something for a family that had used me. I was planting something for myself. Then, 6 months later, something happened that I never expected. My father came to my house. He stood on the porch holding a cardboard box. He looked exhausted. Older. Smäller. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. He said, Can I come in? I hesitated. Then I opened the door. He placed the box on the table. Inside were photographs. Old ones. Me as a baby. Me at 12. Me at graduation. Evan and me. On our wedding day. My grandfather sitting under the maple tree. My father looked at the photos. Your mother wanted me to throw these away. I stared at him. Why? He swallowed. She said the past was only making things worse. I looked at him. What do you want from me? He shook his head. Nothing. That answer surprised me. He sat down. For several minutes, he said nothing. Then he whispered, I was afraid. Of what? Losing control. I waited. He continued. When your grandfather left the trust, I convinced myself I was protecting the family. Your mother convinced me that if you knew how much money there was, you would leave us. I said, and I might have. He nodded. That is what I was afraid of. I looked at him. You chose to lie instead. Yes. And when I stopped sending money, you let people believe I was dead. His eyes filled with tears. I did. Why? He looked at the floor. Because once we told the story, we didn't know how to undo it. I felt something strange. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Just sadness. You could have called me. I know. You could have admitted you were wrong. I know. You could have said you were sorry. He looked up. I am. I believed him. That did not erase anything. But I believed him. I told him he could stay for coffee. We sat in silence. No speeches. No dramatic reconciliation. Just two people staring at photographs of a family that had become something none of us recognized. Before he left, he said, Your grandfather was right about you. I asked, What did he say? My father smiled sadly. He said you were stronger than you knew. I looked down. Then he said something else. He also said that one day you would stop trying to rescue people who were committed to drowning. I almost laughed. Why didn't you tell me that before? He said. Because I wasn't ready to admit he was talking about us. After he left, I stood on the porch for a long time. The air was cool. The sky was gray. And for the first time in years, I felt completely free. Not because I had won. Not because my family had lost. Because I no longer needed either outcome to tell me who I was. I had spent 5 years believing I was responsible for keeping my family together. Then I spent 2 years learning that they had never been holding me. They had been holding on to what I could provide. And there is a painful difference. My mother never apologized. Not really. She sent one letter. It was 4 pages long. Half of it blamed me. A quarter of it blamed my father. And the final paragraph said she hoped someday I would understand that everything she did came from love. I kept the letter, not because I believed it, because I wanted a record of how much a person can confuse love with control. I never sent her money again. Not a dollar. I also stopped feeling guilty about it. That was the hardest part. Not the legal fight. Not the betrayal. Not the lies. The guilt. The belief that saying no made me a bad daughter. It took me years to understand that boundaries are not punishment. They are protection. And sometimes protecting yourself is the most honest thing you can do. There was another consequence my family never expected.